Tethered, Decay, and Fastened Renewal by CozyEarth. Read by AJ Morningstar / Supernova Podfix. Chapter 7 Radar Summary. Danny had a good day. His night, on the other hand. Danny would say that his day was going pretty well. Everywhere he went, people clocked him as new because of his Midwestern accent. He got his coffee, somehow also getting some new friends in the process. He did some grocery shopping, found a coffee pot, found a thrift store that had a mattress. Apparently ran into Tim and Damien's older brother, who willingly goes by Dick. They took a selfie, per Dick's request. Dick helped him find more cheap furniture and move uh, in as little more. Danny vaguely hears Jazz's old warnings on stranger danger, with Sam's voice reminding him to stay off the radar. Still chose to ignore those warnings, letting Dick have run of the place. The two of them grabbed something called a bat burger. Dick talked him into buying a space cat hoodie he was eyeballing from the window. The day ended with him getting Dick's number as well. So, a pretty good day. The night, however, was another story. Danny blames his Fenton luck, or clockwork, the pulling feeling in his core that had lightly been humming all day suddenly became a sharp, burning screech. It was so agonizing that his core forced him to transform, flying off blindly to find the cause. Danny had no idea where he was going or what he would find when he got there, but he had to get there. Something made his core hold him with aching cries of hurt, help, hurt. He flew until he found it, or rather, found him. It didn't take him long. His core sent out, here, safe, help, protect, all right, and got what could be a hurt, alone, tired right back. But something felt weird about it. His core buzzed within him, of a fierce protective whisper of mine, rolling around his chest. It was familiar. It was foreign. It led Danny right to the cause. Danny's eyes locked onto his location. Bleeding out on a roof, not too far from his apartment, was a man. The man was built like a brick house built. He was clad in leather, a red helmet adorned his head, and guns littered his sides. Using the context clues, Danny could only assume that this was the Red Hood, his probably future boss. The sight of him bleeding sent a jolt of ice and lightning through Danny, like everything before was a dream and he had finally woken up. It was sobering. It was terrifying. It was something Danny would deal with later. Slowly, he floated closer to the man who was causing his core such turmoil. Danny called out to Red Hood, first in English, then, after getting no response, in ghost speak. Hood stirred, lazily looking over in his direction. He gave Danny a head tilt as he apparently looked him over. Dorky angel, he slurred out in English with a giggle. The sound caused Danny's core to involuntarily purr. Hood's core, not quite a core, his whatever seemed to purr back, in its own weird, kind of off way. It was almost warm, like a gentle fireplace after the embers died down in a cool afternoon. It wasn't a core, but it was close. There was something wrong with Hood, and it wasn't just the bullet in his shoulder. Okay, big guy, Danny let out with a sigh. Let's take a look at you. He floated closer to the armed man to access what he had just gotten him to assess what he had just gotten himself into. Unafraid as the human tank let out another giggle fit. Not big, you're just tiny, pretty little dorky angel. Okay, big guy, whatever you say. The blood loss was already pretty bad. Hood must have been moving around a lot. Denny placed a hand where the bleeding seemed to be coming from, and Hood let out a little, hardly audible, breath-taking gasp at the contact. You doing okay, big guy? Cold. Sorry about that. Can't turn that off. You, on the other hand, are burning up. Aw, you think I'm hot. Hood's not core purred and cooed with its almost warmth as Danny's rolled in chilled embarrassment. Why was the bleeding man flirting with him? What made him do that? Curse the blood loss. Danny could hardly socialize with full cognitive people. What was he supposed to do here? Danny shook his head with a sigh. The other man's not core had all but made it clear to Danny it was basically the ghost version of touch starved. It made Danny want to cry. It made Danny angry. It made Danny feel responsible for this man, ghost king or not. He was his now, his responsibility. Hood's not core almost preened as Danny's healing finally started kicking in. Focus, Danny. Living problems first, ghost problems later. Okay, big guy. Shoulder's looking better. You got somewhere I can drop you off? Warehouse. You've been there before. I think I know the place. Makes a little more sense now. Stalker. Not a stalker. You just got a lot going on, big guy. Big guy. Tell me about it. Okay, I'm going to take my hand back. You're probably going to pass out. Is that okay? Won't be the first time. Okay, big guy, here we go. Danny lifted Hood up in his arms and flew off. He easily found the place. Now that he met the owner, it felt just like Hood, his haunt. He faces them through the walls and propped Hood up on the couch, making sure that he was comfortable. Leaving a glass of water from the kitchenette by his side, Danny then turned to hunt down a med kit. He knew his powers were still weak, and he knew he couldn't heal Hood all the way, even if his core desperately wanted to. After finally acquiring the medkit, he came back and phased out the bullet from Hood's shoulder, placing it on the counter. He then wrapped Hood's wound the best he knew how, just like Jazz showed him. After making sure everything was secured, Danny fussed a bit more to make Hood more comfortable. His core whispered nest. He promptly shoved that thought away. Danny found a blanket and some pillows in the other room's closet. Pulling the blanket over Hood's legs after his work with the pillows, Danny lightly shook Hood, who had slept through all of it, his core sinking with ice at what was to come next now that his work was done. Angel. Hey, big guy, I'm about to head out. You got anyone you can call to come check on you? Big Bird's already on his way. Good. Get some rest. Okay, Angel. Hood said as he drifted back to sleep, his knot core letting out one final content purr before falling silent with sleep. Danny slowly floated up to the skylight, pausing to look back at the sleeping figure. His core yearned to stay. His head knew he couldn't. With a heavy sigh, Danny left. So much for low radar. Chapter 8. Camera. Summary. Dick and Jason eat toast. The first thing Jason noticed when he woke up was that he was comfy and warm. The second was that he really didn't want to get up. He was on the couch, that much he could tell, but the way he was cocooned in the blanket and sandwiched up with pillows made it feel like a luxury bed. The pits were quiet. If not for a strange feeling they were giving off, Jason's half-awake brain would almost call it a purr. He felt content until a crash came from the kitchen. The lights wearing that followed made it clear that it was Dick. After debating amongst himself for a moment, Dick decided to get up so his house doesn't burn down. Dick meant well, but the man was lucky to be able to make toast on a good day. Jason stretched with his shoulder popping, letting out a groan. Bullet wound almost forgotten. Dick seemed to have done a bang-up job on him and must have given him some sweet, sweet painkillers. Jason honestly wouldn't be able to get through half of what he does if it wasn't for painkillers. Was it a problem? Maybe. Was Jason going to do anything about it? Probably not. Jay, you're up, Dick called from where he was. I was hoping you'd be up soon. I made some toast. I was also trying to make scrambled eggs, but I think I did them wrong. Jason let out a breath as he came into the kitchen. Dick was sending him a genuine grin, clearly happy he's up. Thankfully, the toast was not burnt. But the eggs were another story. To say they were burnt would be an understatement. Dick made charcoal. Dickie, those aren't eggs anymore. There's no saving them, Jason teased as he sat down on the counter. Toast and coffee will be fine, along with whatever painkillers you gave me patching me up. They worked like a charm. Yeah, about that. Dick shifted uncomfortably as he handed over the requested food. Jason's skin began to crawl. What do you remember about last night? I don't remember anything after calling Babs. I think I started to head back here, but that's about it. Jason really doesn't remember. But the pits feel happy thinking about it. That mixed with how Dick was acting, Jason was starting to get nervous. Why? Jay, the way you woke up is how I found you. I thought you handled it yourself, especially since you looked so comfy. Dick's voice trailed off, eyes drifting to the couch where the almost next nest-like pile of pillows still lay. Jason let out a sigh while rubbing his shoulder, the pits making almost butterflies at the touch. This was getting weird. I definitely didn't do any of this. If anything, I would have passed out in the tub. It's what usually happens after I get hurt. Bandage, booze, bath. That this was a premium treatment experience. Jason tried to ignore Dick's increasingly worried expression. Jason took care of himself, just not really how others would like. It was fine. Okay, let's check security. You got here somehow. Dick spoke a bit too chipper. Fake. He was nervous. This definitely was upsetting him. The sooner they figured this out, the better. Jason sighed a swear and brought out the laptop to check the only indoor camera. B had fought with him to at least have one. Jason thought indoor cameras were creepy, so they settled on one. Jason made sure B had no access to it with Tim's help. Thankfully, it was in the living room, a room Jason hardly used. But it was the room where the couch was, so he'd be able to see how he got there. Dick came around the counter to see the feed as Jason booted it up. Neither of them were ready for what they saw. They watched as a distorted glowing figure with snow white hair flies in with Jason through the wall. Though it was hard to see the footage clearly, Jason could say it was the most beautiful thing he had ever laid his eyes on. The sight of the green glowing eyes was what made the pits flutter with a familiar warmth. Jason held his breath as they watched the being gently put Jason on the couch and look around the apartment for a bit, apparently looking for the medkit, as they eventually found it and took it over to where Jason slept. Light muttering and chirping seemed to come from the being as it worked. Each sound made only caused the pits to vibrate excitedly. Jason couldn't take his eyes off the feed. The being placed the medkit on the ground next to Jason as it chittered at his sleeping form. Carefully, they knelt down to look at Jason's bullet wound. Dick inhaled sharply as the two watched the glowing figure reach directly into his shoulder, pulling out the bullet. The wound somehow was looking better after they had done that. No evidence that it had just been jabbed directly with a hand. After placing the bullet on the counter, the figure returned to Jason and the medkit. Jason and Dick watched in shock as the visitor slowly prepped and wrapped Jason's shoulder with almost medical precision and practice that could only be explained by experience. After making sure Jason was secure, his house guests then began to chitter and chirp again, going back to rummage around the apartment. A beat passed, then they returned with the blanket and pillows that still littered the couch. They set to work on making the nest-like construction around Jason, tucking him up with the blanket like a burrito. They worked and chirped and hummed, and as he and Dick watched, Jason felt the pits roll with contentment, warmth, and a feeling akin to possessiveness. Something about what was happening on the screen in front of them felt intimate. A small whisper of irritation in the back of his mind that Dick was also seeing this. He didn't know why. Seeming content with their work, the visitor gently woke Jason with a little shake and trill. Recording Jason stirred, shifting to get a better angle. Current Jason cringed at the sound of his own voice. Angel. Hey, big guy, I'm about to head out. You got anyone to call to come check on you? Hearing the distorted voice actually speak sent a rush of ice over Jason as it crackled over the speaker. It was so chilling and unworldly, and yet somehow so familiar. Big Bird's already on his way. Good. Get some rest. Okay, Angel. Jason felt his face warm up as Dick let out a snort. He seemed to be high in the footage, likely due to the blood loss, but still embarrassing. The figure tucked the recording Jason in a little bit more before floating up to the skylight. About 2/3 of the way up, they stopped and looked back at the Jason burrito. Their face held a longing, almost torn expression, seemingly debating whether or not to actually leave. Jason held his breath as he watched on, studying the distorted face on his screen. After what felt like forever, they finally turned and faced through the skylight, gone. The pits coiled in a hot pain, like it was grieving the loss of his visitor. Jason stops the recording when he sees himself come down from that very skylight. Well, shit, Jason huffed out and almost laughed. Guess I was saved by an angel, an honest to God angel. Just when things couldn't get weirder, he took a bite of his toast. Constantine is going to have a field day whenever he gets around to showing this shady mug. I don't know, Little Wing. I feel like the safe house has been compromised. Maybe you should come back to the manor, Dick says as he awkwardly moves back to his abandoned toast. At least till you're healed and deal with B more than I have to? Hell no, Jason states before downing his coffee. I've already been cooped up there enough this week. Not planning on being benched again anytime soon. Besides, I bet my favorite gun that my angel isn't planning on doing me any harm. The room that had the med kit also had thousands of dollars worth of weapons. If they were going to do something, they would have. But drop it, Dick, it's not happening. A chime let out from Dick's pocket, presumably his phone. Dick cleared his throat and pulled it out to check it. After a moment, he let out a laugh, turning his phone to show Jason. Dick had gotten a text in a group chat that had him, Tim, Damien, and Danny. Oh my god, Jace, look. Glancing at the screen, Jason sees a picture, apparently from Danny. It was a selfie of him, Tim, and Damie chilling on a gargoyle with to-go cups from Harley's. Tim looks genuinely relaxed. Damie actually has a little smile, and Danny has a sharp, stunning grin on his beautiful face. Jason feels fuzzy just looking at the young meta. Dick had mentioned the guy's lack of self-preservation and how he's definitely is running from something. Jason could tell the guy was trouble. Dick let off a chuckle. I'm so happy that Danny has warmed up to him so fast. Danny is genuinely a great guy to hang out with. Helped the guy move in yesterday. The place was bare as could be. Guy needs more friends. He shook his head. Tim's a big fan of the guy. Apparently he's stupid smart too. The two went on a text tangent last night about nerd nonsense. Can't keep up with this. Can keep up with the sash and dish it out too. Who'd have guessed? As Dick went on about how everyone's been bonding, Jason feels the ugly heat of jealousy. He lies to himself that he doesn't know why. If he's so great, why haven't I met him yet? Jay, that's a great idea. Oh, I'll text him now. Toast only fills a guy up so much. After a moment to text the group chat with Danny, Dick's phone started to blow up. Glancing over Dick's shoulder, Jason sees what the commotion was about. Tim and Damie are protesting, going on about how this is their friend. They don't want Jason to scare him off. Jason rolls his eyes. Tell them to plan to go to Bat Burger by my place in 20. No complaining. We'll just see how great this Danny guy is.